Most men think the way to leave an impression is through gifts, looks, charm, or relentless effort. But that approach rarely works. Not because those things are wrong, but because they're common, predictable, easily forgotten. What truly stays in someone's mind, especially in a woman's, isn't how hard you try to win her over, but the emotional experience you create simply by being yourself. Not a performance, not a strategy of desperation, but a presence that feels grounded, confident, and self-directed. That's the heart of this video. You're about to learn 9 psychological frameworks, loosely inspired by Machiavelli's philosophy, but adapted to modern relationships in a healthy, ethical way. These aren't manipulations, and they aren't tricks. They're principles that help you build respect, mystery, and emotional impact without begging for attention or trying to impress anyone. No chasing. No performing. No asking for permission to matter. This is how you become the kind of man she doesn't forget, not because you controlled her emotions, but because you controlled your own. 1. The power of respect over approval. There's a famous idea attributed to Machiavelli that many people misunderstand. It is safer to be feared than loved. Men online twist it into something harsh or cruel, but the deeper meaning is far simpler and far more useful. He wasn't saying you should scare people or intimidate women. He was saying that respect forms the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Love without respect becomes comfortable. Comfort without boundaries becomes complacency. And complacency eventually becomes indifference. This is the trap many men fall into. They believe that by constantly giving, constantly pleasing, constantly offering more, they'll be valued more. But human nature doesn't work like that. Not in friendships, not in dating, not in business. What is given with no standards eventually holds no weight. Respect comes from boundaries. Boundaries come from self-worth. And self-worth comes from how you treat yourself, not how you convince others to treat you. This is the fear Machiavelli meant. Not fear of you as a person, but fear of losing you because you're not a man who abandons his values. You don't yell. You don't threaten. You don't manipulate. You simply step back when your standards are crossed. Silence becomes your message. Your absence becomes the lesson. Not to punish. Not to instill fear. But to reinforce respect. And the moment she feels that you're someone who won't cling to a situation where you aren't treated well, the dynamic shifts. Not toward control, but toward balance. You respect yourself, so she respects you, naturally, without force. That's the beginning of deeper attraction. Not obsession through pressure, but connection through strength. 2. Shape the image you project. Another idea attributed to Machiavelli is this. It is not necessary to be good. It is necessary to appear good. Now let's translate that into a healthier, modern perspective. This doesn't mean you should pretend or fake who you are. But it does mean that presentation matters. You can be kind, loyal, intelligent, and deeply grounded, but if you move through the world with uncertainty, tension, or insecurity, people won't perceive your value. Human beings, women included, react first to energy, not facts. Confidence is felt before it's explained. Presence is sensed before it's understood. And this isn't about acting. It's about alignment. If you want to be seen as confident, you practice moving like someone who trusts himself, even on days you don't feel perfect. Not through arrogance, not through a mask, but through calmness. Slow movements. Steady eye contact. A voice that doesn't rush to fill silence. Stillness is power. Mystery, when authentic, is magnetic. Let people see most of who you are, but not everything. Reveal your depth slowly, not all at once. Because when someone has room to imagine the rest, their interest grows. You don't win a woman by overwhelming her with stories, compliments, or emotional outpouring. You draw her in by sharing just enough that she becomes curious about the rest. That's not manipulation. That's pacing. That's emotional intelligence. 3. Be the lion and the fox, without playing games. Machiavelli once described the ideal leader as both a lion and a fox. In dating, this duality becomes incredibly powerful, but only when applied ethically. The lion represents strength. You hold boundaries. You remain steady. You don't chase approval. You don't react emotionally to small tests. The fox represents intelligence. You stay calm when emotions rise. You don't take every comment personally. You pay attention to what's behind the words. You respond intentionally instead of impulsively. When a woman tests you, and she will at some point, it's rarely malicious. Most of the time, she's simply trying to understand your stability. She wants to know who you are when situations shift. Are you someone who crumbles? Someone who snaps? Someone who gets defensive? Most men fail these moments because they think the test is a threat. It's not a threat. It's information. Here's the balance. When she's emotional or overwhelmed, be the fox. Stay calm. Listen. Let the moment pass without adding fuel. When she crosses a boundary, be the lion. Not with anger. Not with lectures. But with steady confidence. This doesn't work for me. And then you step back. It's not dominance. It's not coldness. It's self-respect. A man who knows when to be gentle and when to be firm is unforgettable, not because he's unpredictable, but because he's balanced. He's not thrown off by storms, and he's not passive in the face of disrespect. That combination is rare. That's what makes women pay attention. 4. Plant curiosity, not conflict. One of Machiavelli's oldest principles was, divide and conquer. But we're not applying it in a controlling or manipulative way. Instead, we translate it into a modern relational insight. People don't grow when they feel certain. They grow when they feel curious. Instead of arguing with a woman about her beliefs, or trying to win her approval by agreeing with everything she says, you introduce gentle questions that make her think a little deeper. Not challenges. Not confrontations. Just subtle invitations to reconsider something. She says, I never date introverted guys. Instead of saying, me too, or, why not? You might respond with, that's a rule most people outgrow. You're not attacking her opinion. You're not controlling her. You're just giving her a doorway into a broader perspective. And here's the power. The human mind can argue with someone else, but it can't ignore its own curiosity. When you plant a gentle question, she'll explore it on her own, not because you pressured her, but because the idea intrigued her. Curiosity is connection. Curiosity is attraction. Curiosity is emotional gravity. You're not dividing her world. You're expanding it. That's how you become a presence she remembers, calm, grounded, and quietly transformative. 5. Reward slowly, respond firmly. There's a common idea in power dynamics. Injury should be dealt at once, while reward should be given slowly. But we're not talking about causing injury in relationships. We're talking about clarity, about responding firmly when your boundaries are crossed, and giving emotional warmth gradually when it's earned and respected. Here's the truth most men never learn. When someone, anyone, not just a woman, disrespects your boundaries, the worst reaction is emotional overdrive. Explaining, debating, pleading, or accusing all send one message. Your emotions are controlled by her actions. A grounded man doesn't react emotionally. He responds with direction. Boundaries don't require anger. They require action. If a line is crossed, instead of raising your voice, you simply pull back. No dramatic exit. No emotional punishment. No. Let me teach you a lesson. Speeches. Just space. Just quiet. Just a shift in your availability. And that absence is what delivers the message. Not to hurt her, but to protect your own emotional ecosystem. In that silence, she becomes aware of her own behavior. Not because you lectured her, but because you stayed grounded. Now the flip side, rewards. Warmth, affection, appreciation, these things hold more emotional weight when given mindfully rather than constantly. When you show care too quickly or too often, it becomes background noise. But when your presence, your affection, your compliments arrive at a natural pace, when they feel earned, they carry real meaning. You're not withholding love. You're giving it in alignment with the moment. This balance creates emotional clarity. She knows what behaviors build connection, and what behaviors break it. Not because you manipulated her, but because your responses were consistent, calm, and self-respecting. That's what reward slowly, respond firmly looks like in a healthy way. It's not a tactic. It's mature relational leadership. 6. Observation over attraction. Most men approach a woman with attention on her looks, her charm, her presence. A confident man approaches differently. He observes, not in judgment, not in superiority, but with awareness. He pays attention to how she treats people she doesn't need to impress, how she behaves when she's comfortable versus when she's not, how she speaks about others, whether she shows gratitude, whether she shifts personality depending on who's watching. This isn't about catching her. It's about understanding her. Because attraction isn't just chemistry. It's compatibility. A man who observes with quiet confidence isn't distracted by beauty alone. He looks for self-awareness, emotional maturity, kindness, consistency, traits that make a relationship stable, not just exciting. And here's where subtle communication becomes powerful. When the moment is right, not too early, not as a weapon, you might say something simple, authentic, and grounded. You seem different around certain people. Or, you're more honest when you're not trying to impress anyone. There's no judgment, no accusation, no pressure. Just truth. And truth, when spoken calmly, creates impact. Most people go years without someone genuinely seeing them. Not romantically, just seeing them. When you notice something real, something subtle, something she didn't expect anyone to pick up on, it creates a memorable moment. Not because you exposed her, but because you understood her. This is the essence of emotional presence. You're not trying to impress. You're not performing. You're not attempting to win her. You're simply paying attention. And attention, when real, is unforgettable. 7. The power of strategic absence. If you're always available, always texting back instantly, always ready to meet the moment she asks, you create a sense of predictability. Predictable is comfortable. But predictable can also become invisible. Not because she doesn't care, but because the human brain adapts. It normalizes anything consistent. The warmth you give becomes expected. The attention becomes assumed. And eventually, the excitement fades. This is why intentional absence is powerful. Not ghosting. Not disappearing as punishment. Not playing games. But stepping back when the energy is unbalanced. Your presence is being taken for granted. You feel yourself overgiving. You need to realign your center. Respect is drifting. The dynamic is becoming too familiar too fast. Here's what absence does. 1. It resets the emotional rhythm. It interrupts autopilot and creates space for reflection. 2. It restores your internal clarity. You return grounded instead of reactive. 3. It reintroduces mystery. Not from secrecy, but from independence. 4. It reminds both people of value. Presence means more when it's contrasted with space. A woman doesn't miss a man because he vanishes. She misses him when the connection had meaning, and suddenly there's silence where certainty used to be. Again, this isn't about causing fear or pain. It's about maintaining your emotional center. When you step away without drama, without accusations, without emotional explosions, you communicate one thing. My peace matters too. And when you return, Not needy, not resentful, but calm and centered. You reset the dynamic in a healthy, powerful way. Absence isn't manipulation. It's boundary maintenance. A relationship requires two people who show up with intention, not one person pouring endlessly while the other gets comfortable. You break the cycle by stepping back, catching your breath, and returning with clarity. 8. Become her turning point. If you want to be unforgettable, don't aim to be the funniest guy she's met. Don't aim to be the most charming, the most attractive, or the most impressive. Aim to be the moment her story shifted. People don't remember the details of relationships, but they remember transformation. The man who made her rethink what she accepts in relationships. The man who introduced a new standard of respect. The man who listened differently than anyone before. The man who challenged her gently, thoughtfully, without ego. The man who walked away when the line was crossed and genuinely meant it. The man who didn't chase, didn't crumble, didn't lose himself trying to win approval. That kind of presence leaves a mark. You're not shaping her life. You're shaping your own, and she feels the shift. Because emotional impact doesn't come from intensity. It comes from clarity. You become the turning point not by trying to change her, but by being so aligned with your own values that she sees herself differently in the presence of your strength. People remember the moments that changed them. Be that moment, not through force, but through authenticity. 9. Step into your own gravity. Everything in this video points to one central idea. Stop chasing attention. Start building presence. Presence isn't loud. It's not performative. It's not designed to entertain. Presence is self-trust. Presence is calm. Presence is knowing who you are and living from that place. You're not trying to win her. You're becoming someone who doesn't need to. And ironically, that's what draws people in. When you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself, you radiate a different kind of energy. You become grounded, steady, intentional. And that presence creates gravity. Gravity doesn't push. Gravity doesn't chase. Gravity doesn't beg. Gravity pulls.